Hello, America, and welcome to the next episode, this episode of Transcendent. It is where we take the conversations of the day and take them beyond their normal boundaries, which is what the word transcendent means. We lift the conversation from the normal scope uh, of elements that would feed into the conversation and lift it into the realm of the spirit, where God's word is predominant and where that word serves as a guide and post of wisdom for us to find our pathway through life. This is a rough terrain called life, and it has a lot of hills and vales, and it has a lot of dips and turns. But if we will follow the anchor points, if we will follow the markers of God's word, we'll find our way through every life situation, including the multiple situations that we're faced with now as a culture. We are in a transitional period, uh, even among the nations of the earth, and particularly here in these United States of America, like we have not been in any point in our history, arguably. Some greater points maybe have taken place, and like the Civil War and Revolutionary War, and when everything was up for question. But it's a different kind of warfare. We're in a war right now. It's a different kind of warfare. It's not armament and it's not soldiers so much. We're in a warfare of ideas. We're in a warfare of cultures. That kind of war is being raised to a very high degree, so much so now that it has engulfed virtually all of us and making us choose which side of the fighting forces we're going to be on. And we're only shades away from what could descend into armed conflict or a civil war. There's no hyperbole, there's no stretch there. So we need to take the conversation higher. We need to lift it into spiritual plane and see where the wisdom of God will guide us to avoid any level of destruction to ourselves and our posterity, and to reverse that and cause ourselves and our posterity to both thrive in a time like this and set a course for a time of blessing unprecedented for those who are coming after us. But we have the responsibility to do that during our time on the stage. And so Transcendent is an opening up of an opportunity to get there. I'm going to talk to you tonight on the subject while men slept. We're going to look at some three parts of this talk tonight, and with the overall thought that something happened in a passage of scripture that I will open up to you in just a moment. If you want to get ahead of me, just go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 13, and we're going to be looking briefly at verses 34 and 35 and some following, probably on down till about verse 40, and draw out some parallels. And then we're going to talk about in three different sections tonight, with some videos to boot, to show you the level of conflict that's in the culture, the level of conflict that is in the culture, and what is being done to move the masses in a certain direction and have you think a certain thing and therefore behave a certain way. But I always have begun these broadcasts, as I will tonight, with announcing to you that a prayer wave is building. Now, that's important because the prayer wave is always God's precursor for him releasing miracles and power signs and wonders that move the culture back toward himself, this reunification of God with his handiwork. Prayer is always a precursor for that. God begins to put people in an attitude of prayer. And I want to let you know that prayer wave is building right here in the city of San Antonio. For example, Pastor Gene Leffler leads Lighthouses of Prayer International. It was formerly Women's Prayer International. Before that, Women's Neighborhood Prayer. And during those seasons of time, it was led by Joan Courtney. It was Joan Bond. Her husband passed away. She found a wonderful husband in L.C. Courtney. She's now Joan Courtney. Both of them, by the way, are fighting the good fight of faith, where their own physical well-being is concerned. So keep them in your prayers, please, as we move forward with the purposes of God in the city. But Joan after having led Women's Neighborhood Prayer and then Women's Prayer International for 20 years, felt like God wanted to put that into the hands of a pastor. And the man that stepped forward to lead that with such a gentle spirit and the right man for the job was Pastor Gene Leffler. He pastors River of Life Church here in the city of San Antonio, but now he also leads and have for about the last year and a half or so. In fact, this month we're going to celebrate Joan's leadership tenure on the 22nd of October and officially recognize Gene's new role in Lighthouses of Prayer International. Unlike WNP or WPI, Women Neighborhood Prayer or Women's Prayer International, Lighthouses of Prayer International also includes men, and more formidably, or more directly, I should say, pastors. Gene, when God gave him the mantle to do that, began to ask several of us in the community about praying pastors, not just pastors, but pastors who pray earnestly. That's not to say that every pastor doesn't. We're certainly not going to pass judgment on whether or not pastors do or do not. But however, some things are not judgment. There's just statistical fact. There are pastors who don't tithe. There's pastors, whose moral lives need to be helped. There are pastors whose integrity suffers. But there's also pastors who pray and fast and seek the face of God. And there are pastors who are concerned about the welfare of their flock and about the welfare beyond their flock to the greater flock of the city. There are pastors who desire to work together. There are pastors who want to see God's kingdom come in the city of San Antonio. And so when we began to look for pastors for prayer, we looked within the network of our own relationships and brought together a dozen of us who met regularly weekly for a time period up until the national elections. And then after that, on Sunday nights, and now from now to the end of this calendar year, we meet the first Sunday night of the month, still pressing into prayer and believing that God will release and has and will continue to release his wisdom to us. And so we met this past night at my dear friend, Pastor Jimmy Robles, who pastors Last Chance Ministries at 404 Brady. That was the first Sunday night in October. Intercessors and pastors gathered together there. We will do it next month in November at the great Vida Abundante on South Presa, pastored by Pastor Eli Bonilla. I love that man. I call him Batman. Because the city, Gotham is Gotham is safe when Batman is around. So we just thank God for his service to this city, and his brother-in-law Marcus, I call him Robin, because they team ministered together on the steps of City Hall back in 2013, like no couple I had ever seen before, and so. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, folks. I can see some of your names coming there, and I'm thankful that you've joined me tonight. So tag some friends, if you will. Let them know that we're on, because we're going to be covering some stuff, y'all. We got some ground to cover tonight to see the purposes of God go forth in the city. So join us first Sunday nights. This coming first Sunday in November to be at Vida Abundante on the south side. There's two campuses, one on South Presa and the other off of Grissom Road. But we're meeting on the south side campus at 6 o'clock, first Sunday in November. Mark your calendars for that. And then the first Sunday in December, we're going over to the north side for Kirk Freeman at Crossbridge. I think his name is Kirk, at Crossbridge Church. So thankful for that as well. Relationships across the city of people, pastors who are praying. You need to know that. You need to know that God's moving in that way. Not only are there pastors praying, there are women in the neighborhood and neighborhoods across our city who are continuing to pray that seed left by Joan and women's neighborhood prayer. We just finished David and Allie Brown, some of my most favorite people on the planet. See there, Allie, I told you. That led 10 days of prayer here in the city of San Antonio from Rosh Hashanah on to Yom Kippur. These praying rhythms, these prayer gatherings, they're happening, and we're learning how now to connect them in rhythm. One of those rhythms is right at San Antonio in Black, White, and Brown. Our executive director, a woman of God and a woman of prayer, Natalie Hardy, leads our I Pray experience every Friday. I Pray experience every Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So if you are available and can come to the physical location at 8023 Vantage Drive and pray there, please feel free to do that. Or if you need to also be at work or wherever you are and want to touch us by way of Facebook, you can do that as well. SABWBTX. That was something else when Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram and all that went off the scale for a little while, for several hours yesterday. And those things are not over, by the way. There's some things connected to that we will just let unfold as the time moves forward. But we're thankful that the people of God are praying, and because they're praying, things are happening. So join us Friday, SABWBTX, for the I Pray experience. And then I want to, lastly, before I go to commercial about the I Pray experience, I want to tell you about Pastor Rob Wallace. He and his wife Teresa lead the Great Embassy Christian Church here in the city of San Antonio, and God has placed on his heart a digital connection with 1,000 intercessors. The number of them are about 300 at present, who can be text at a moment's notice about an emergency prayer need, whether it's in the city dealing with the church or whether dealing with the matters of the city or whatever. We can come together with a text away and pray on that matter, no matter where we are in the world. We can get that text and begin to isolate some time to pray. It's called SA PrayerNet. You can become involved in it by just dialing to the number 210-796-6999, 210-796-6999. I'll say it again, 210-796-6999. Text the word city, SITY, to that number, and you will immediately become a part of that intercessory prayer team and will get the prayer alerts by text as they go out. The first, think about it, 1,000, the first benchmark, the first short-term goal, I should say, is 1,000, and every 100 is a benchmark. So we reached 3 benchmarks. We're just over 300 intercessors now, on our way to 1,000 in the first phase, until we cover the city with thousands of intercessors that can be alerted with a text and be drawn into a place of prayer and speak the mind of God into the earth. Think about it. So you want to become a part of that, 210-796-6999. Those efforts of prayer and others are building in the city. Thank you again, guys, for being on here, and good evening to you all. I'm so glad that you're there. Martha's on YouTube. Great. Greetings, faithful followers of Jesus. Thank you guys so much for just being on, and do me a favor and like and comment and share and let others know that you're on the platform that you're on. You're seeing us there, and we'll move on with this because we got some stuff to cover. As I said, I'm going to go to commercial about our I Pray experience at SABWB with our executive director, Natalie Hardy, and then we're going to come back and talk about the first part of that, of what's in the cauldron, what's going on that's putting stress and worry and concern on the general public, and what should be the response of the body of Christ in the midst of that. So watch this commercial for our I Pray experience, and I'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Natalie Hardy from SABWB, San Antonio in Black, White, and Brown. Every Friday morning at 10 a.m., we are at this table seeking the face of God on behalf of our city. And if you didn't know that, I wanted you to know so that you can tune in with us and pray with us, whether we do it on that same time or after the fact, and look at a broadcast and pray with us after the fact. Every voice counts. So join with us on Friday mornings, and we look forward to praying with you. Bless you. Bye-bye.
And you can pick up your phone. Just go to SABWBTX on Facebook, and you'll find us there in prayer as we're reaching into heaven and reaching into earth, becoming the joining force that releases the unseen forces of heaven into the natural occurrences of earth. And we watch God do only what God can do in cooperation with people who the system is the way he set it up. In cooperation with people, he moves in and does supernatural things in the world, and we're privileged to be a part of that. Okay, in our first section tonight, I want to just kind of cover with you the things that are happening that is kind of got the culture in a topsy-turvy. Everyone is polarized now, and have kind of drawn lines around their own particular camps, and we're willing to fight tooth and nail to defeat perhaps some other ideology. And the enemy has done so well at breeding division among us, and it has not. If anyone needs to see it and respond rightfully and righteously to it, it's the body of Christ. But in the culture, apart from the body of Christ, there's all kinds of things tugged and pulled, both in the social media area where I right now am, and you are, and we'll see out in the social media all kinds of things happen. I want to show you. The first thing I want to show you is relative to the vaccines, and there's a lot of pressure being put on people who choose not to vaccinate, and being name called and blamed and all kinds of stuff by people who want you now to want to mandate you taking the vaccine. Now, some of those same people that are now mandating that you take it, when it was under the administration of the former president, President Trump, those same people denigrated and talked negatively about and inspired doubtful disputations about the vaccine. That president is out, the vaccine is here, and now those same people are trying to not only just say take it, but make you take it or lose your job. Now that ought to tell you something. The switch that you will see on the video that I'm about to show you, it's only about a minute of it. This actual clip is over an hour long, my producer tells me, but I've asked her to play about the first minute and 20 seconds or so of it to give you a firsthand voice at political figures and others who, news folks, those at the time running for president and vice president, and others who are pushing away from any confidence being had in the vaccine, that they now are backing and putting your job on the line for. So I want you to listen to this, and I'll be right back to this little video clip, and then we'll be right back after that.
I think it's going to be a very skeptical American public about taking the vaccine, and they should be.
We can't trust the president and take his word and take a vaccine that might cause harm to us.
If and when the vaccine comes, and it's not likely to go through all the tests that needs to be and the trials that are needed to be done.
Let's just say there's a vaccine that is approved and even distributed before the election. Would you get it?
Well, I think that's going to be an issue for all of us.
When we finally do, God willing, get a vaccine, who's going to take the shot? Who's going to take the shot?
We will need to have access to the vaccine results so we can make our independent assessment to make sure that Donald Trump's fingerprints are not on it.
You can be the first one to say, sign me up. They now say it's okay.
Is the vaccine safe? Frankly, I'm not going to trust the federal government's opinion. And I wouldn't recommend to New Yorkers based on the federal government's opinion.
And the question of whether it's real when it's there, that requires enormous transparency.
Would you trust that vaccine?
There's very little that we can trust that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth.
We cannot take for granted this process will be free of political influence.
I don't trust the president, and I don't trust the FDA.
If Donald Trump can't give answers and the administration can't give answers to these three questions, the American people should not have confidence.
You're going to say to the American people now, Here's a vaccine. It was new. It was done.
So all of that naysaying about the vaccine when it was under President Trump's administration. Don't trust the federal government. I don't trust the FDA. I don't trust. Now those same people are wanting, the same group of people are wanting to say to you, take the vaccine or lose your job. Take the vaccine or be ostracized. Take the vaccine or stop being unwilling to be a part of the cure. The same people. Now that should say something to you. It should say something to you with reference to what's really driving it. Is this a health issue? It's not a health issue to the seriousness that they would have you believe it, because there's no bodies stacking up. There's no extreme death rate. Check the CDC numbers yourself, and you'll find out that the death rate is not skyrocketed, and there's not a bunch of people. What is being used to feed the fear is cases. We had all these cases. Well, cases is not an issue. Does the cases end up in hospitalizations, and does the hospitalizations end in death? I'm not saying that COVID-19 is not real. I'm not saying that it is not a killer. It is both of those things. But fear injected into that process makes it something that paralyzes the culture and polarizes the culture. Paralyzes and polarizes the culture and pits us one against another, such that we're willing to blame each other. I tell you, the frailty of the social acceptance layer is very thin. The frailty of it is that it can be turned with those who are in the media pushing a particular narrative. I want to take you now into on this very issue, Governor DeSantis down in Florida. He's a hero of a lot of people, but he just recently appointed a new state surgeon general, a black man by the name of Joseph Lapido. Joseph Lapido. And Joseph stood with the governor at his back and made one of the soundest talks on the area of the vaccine that I've seen in a long time. I want you to take a listen in just a minute to how he addresses the matter of fear and fear that is being used today to pump the culture up. Take a look at this video. I'll be right back and we'll talk some more about it.
Florida will completely reject fear as a way of making policies in public health. So we're done with fear. We're going to be very explicit about the differences between the science and our opinions. And this idea that, people don't get to make their own decisions, on issues of health related to their own personal health is wrong.
Oh my gosh, I love this guy. Right? Yes, Keith. Yeah. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Ron DeSantis strikes again. Ron DeSantis hired as the new Florida State Surgeon General a guy by the name of Joseph Ladapo. He is a medical doctor trained at Harvard and a PhD. Comparing his medical bona fides to a bunch of 18-year-old journalists writing for bloggers is obviously hilarious. But the journalists have attacked Ron DeSantis' latest hire, the Surgeon General of Florida, because he said this during a briefing yesterday where he brought up actual science. And, journalists are too stupid to figure that out. Check this out.
Talk to the governor, and there are a few things that we're going to keep in mind as we approach public health here. Florida will completely reject fear as a way of making policies in public health. So we're done with fear. We're going to be very explicit about the differences between the science and our opinions. And this idea that, people don't get to make their own decisions, on issues of health related to their own personal health is wrong, and it's
wrong. He says
it's not something that we're going to be about. There are good reasons to reject lockdowns. There are a lot of after lockdowns, overall mortality increase. Lockdowns are bad, but we need to respect human rights that, people do have autonomy over their lives, and it's not okay it's not even not okay, but it's not virtuous and it's not right to just sort of take away those rights from individuals. So vaccines are up to the person. There's nothing special about them compared to any other preventive. The state should be promoting good health, and vaccination isn't the only path to that. It's been treated almost like a religion. That's just senseless, right? There are lots of good pathways to health, and vaccination is not the only one.
Oh my gosh, I love this guy. Right? Yes, Guy. Thank you. That's the first time Guy's initiated a round of applause. He never does that. He waits for me. That is a Guy-initiated round of applause.
When we get into the midst of that, what you see, folks, is you see common sense prevailing, because there's not a single one of you who disagree with what the new state medical person in Florida has put forth. Vaccines is not the only way to good health. It's not the only way to beat the virus. It's not the only way to maintain a strong health composition. All of them should be welcomed. Why is there a forced issue with the vaccine? That in and of itself, again, should alert you to the fact that when all other options are not at the table, then tyranny is sitting at the head of the table. When all of the other options are removed, or when they're talked negatively. I saw recently Bill Gates sitting in front of a stack of books he was reading. One of the books was entitled How to Lie with Statistics. That was the title on the book, How to Lie with Statistics. So you can take information and fragment it and frame it in such a way that even the truth can be made to support a lie and a distortion. When a vaccine is being said that this is the only way you can get that, this is it, this is the approved way, and especially when those who have taken it are suffering severe all the way up to death results from taking a vaccine. And then you got the church and other entities that are jumping on that bandwagon. Right here on Transcendent, I pointed out to you that Bishop Paul Morton, the Full Gospel Fellowship, actually told his folks, unless you can prove that you're vaccinated, don't come to church, watch us online. Bishop Sheard, the presiding bishop of the Church of God in Christ, shut down all live stuff dealing with the Kojic convention in Memphis this year because of these scares about COVID. And they're scares, it's fear. There's nothing, there's no indication within the medical field. And you have medical professionals, doctors and nurses, who are saying they're not going to take the vaccine. And as a result of them saying that, now, first of all, it should alert, cause you to come to alert when a medical professional tells you, I'm not taking it. But those medical professionals are being dismissed from their post in the midst of what is supposed to be an overrun of patients in the hospital. Border Patrol. I sat down with a young man as early as last night, working both directly and indirectly with Border Patrol. And the people who are coming across the border, 22% of them COVID positive, presumably because none of them are actually COVID tested. Those tests that have been done in the facilities where they have been held, 22% of them came back positive, and they're releasing them into the country without any, into different areas of the country without any restrictions that they want to place on you as a citizen for doing that. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So then where is all of this leading? Where all of this pressure? My job, I had a woman approach me as early as this past Sunday, which would be 2 days ago. She's an engineer working for the government, but because her job was put on the line, either take this jab or lose your job, she quit her job. And she was there to ask me at the end of the service, where can she go? And she would do whatever kind of work was necessary, but that she didn't want to endanger her health by being forced to take I'm telling you, this stuff is crazy, right? When the closest thing that we have to this kind of arrangement is the one thing that we nations of the free world since the Second World War vowed that we would not do, and we put it down in codes called Nuremberg codes, that we would not again subjugate people to those kinds of making medical experiments out of them, giving them something as a medical experiment, because these things that have come down doesn't even qualify, according to some, as vaccines. Someone would say, well, how would it happen differently under the former administration? This is my guess, that the vaccine will have been made available as it is now, but there would have been no coercion on the other side of it, saying that you must take it or lose your job or lose your ability to travel or lose your ability to connect with family members and all this other stuff. Take it if you want to take it. And if that's where your faith is, in taking a vaccine, then you should take it. If that's where your faith, you should be well informed. But after being well informed about the potential dangers in it, in fact, I want to take you now to an NBA basketball player. In fact, if the producer's listening to me, one of those videos, I didn't cover this particular video with her before the show, so she'll speak into my ear if it's there. Basketball player, she said she didn't have it, so I'll tell you about it. Some of you probably have already seen it. A basketball player is asked the question. He's a star player out of Orlando, and he's asked the question about why he's not taking a vaccine. And he said, number one, you shouldn't have to press an answer for why you're taking a vaccine or not taking a vaccine. But since you ask, I'm young, I'm in good health, I've had COVID, I therefore have natural immunities, and those immunities are stronger than the vaccine, so there's no need for me to take the vaccine. But they take figures and public figures, and sometimes we get help from where we don't expect to get help from. Now, I'm going to talk about Nicki Minaj. Now, some of you know who that is, and she's a very vulgar woman with reference to the lyrics in her music. I don't know anything about her personal life, but I know that she's vulgar in her songs, and has made some pretty nasty stuff. And that is a but she even stepped forward and said, you shouldn't be forced to take a vaccine. And things just blew up around her because she spoke her mind. Obviously, if you listen to some of her music, the woman's going to speak her mind. And she spoke her mind on this issue and was berated because she spoke her mind on it. Why? Because it was different than the narrative that is being forced down the throat of the culture. If you dare say anything against that narrative, then you're racist, you're unintelligent, you're fearful, or whatever label they want to put on you to try to coerce you into to corral you into the corner of obedience, to take whatever they tell you to take, like they tell you to take it, when they tell you to take it, and you will smile and agree with them while doing so. I cannot believe we're here. It's hard for me to believe as a culture that we're here and that we seem to be okay with being here. Not everybody, not all of us. In fact, our third segment tonight, we're going to talk about our necessity to find each other. Those of us who don't, we're not kicking anybody who wants to take a vaccine. I think they should look at the information. But if after having looked at it and they conclude that, yes, this is what I need to do, my faith is at peace with doing this, then as a person who's not going to take the vaccine, I would say, okay, take it and be at peace. Take it and stay in faith. Take it and walk in faith. And the Lord said to me about 90 days ago now, maybe a little more, he said to me in a season in prayer, he said very loudly in my own heart, I didn't hear it with my ears, but in my heart, he said, pray for the vaccinated. This is what he said to me. Pray for the vaccinated and pray for the unvaccinated. We're going to do that tonight before we get off the broadcast. I've done it publicly several times, but I've privately a lot more. Pray for the vaccinated. and pray for the unvaccinated. The time will come when, whether you're vaccinated or not, you're going to need the power of God to sustain you and keep you. The time is upon us. Not only will it come, it's upon us now, that you're going to need the power of God to keep you in the midst of all that's going on with that. I think, producer, I have one more video in there, do I not? That I covered with her. Let's get ready to play that final video, and I'm coming back and make some comments on that, and then we're going to move into a commercial and then to the third part of our show for tonight. Just take a look at this video.
For 4 years, Democrats went on and on and on. The corrupt corporate media went on and on and on about kids in cages. You couldn't turn on the evening news without hearing kids in cages. What they didn't tell you is Barack Obama built those cages, and today under Joe Biden, the cages are bigger and they're more full than they were before. Mr. President, every Democrat who stood up and lamented kids in cages in the House of Representatives, Representative Ocasio-Cortez has a famous photo of her grasping her head by the kids in cages. Well, I'm going to give a simple challenge for Representative Ocasio-Cortez and for every Democrat in this body. Go see the Biden cages with your own eyes. I've seen them, the Donna tent facility with over 4,000 people with little boys and little girls on top of each other. Just a couple of weeks ago when I was in the Rio Grande Valley, the rate of COVID positivity in the Biden cages was over 22%.
Over 22%
and all the Democrats who talked about
COVID
this,
cases
if they don't go,
in what he's calling
if
the
they
Biden
don't
cages.
denounce the Biden cages, then they're telling you that they're hypocrites, that they didn't believe it when they said it, that they didn't care about it when they said it, that it was all politics. It wasn't about their kids.
Okay,
Why does
right
Joe
there,
Biden
I
refuse
want
to
to just
go to the Rio
remind you
Grande Valley?
that,
Because if he...
and we'll have enough of that. I wanted to remind you that I talked with a person related very closely with Border Patrol just last night, a young man. These were his words to me. He is middle tier in terms of his ranking, and he's on a part of a traveling team that accesses the porous nature of our southern border. He looked me in the face with tears in his eye and told me this. The American public, he says, have no idea about the true nature of what it looks like at the border. He said, you have no idea. He said, the things that our cameras have caught happening to people, women, children at the border, cartels, people that they have trafficked and extracting payment from them of one type or another. He said, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what was happening. And yet the same people who you recall during President Trump's presidency screamed for 4 years, kids in cages, and they knew when they were saying that President Barack Obama had those cages constructed. That's a known fact now. But the news media, a complicit, corrupt news media, more corrupt than I have ever seen it in my 60 years of life. In fact, there was a time period, I don't know that trust was even unfounded back in those days, because there are some things that the governmental agencies has done through the years with people who brought certain levels of change into the country, and they wanted to somehow denigrate that person's character. These trusted organizations would leak statements out about them being less morally upright than they appear to be on television. Now we don't. Now we can place no credibility even in those things, because we have learned that the government will do what sometimes it will do what it feels like is necessary to push its own agenda. They knew that those cages were built under the Obama administration, but they smeared the Trump administration as though he's the one he actually, the Trump administration was actually the ones who changed the laws to keep that from happening. But now you got all this stuff happening at the border, 60,000 Haitians, 60,000 more. There's already 30,000 under a bridge as you and I are talking tonight in Del Rio, 30,000 people. This same source indicates that there's 151 ethnicities crossing the border, not just Haitians, Bosnians, Uzbekistanians, Kenyans, South Africans. When they found out that the door was wide open, this administration has neither the resolve nor the intent to close it and make it safe for the American people that's here. They came from all over. They didn't come directly from Haiti. They were scattered from Haiti in the great earthquake, you remember, that devastated that nation. And there was a diaspora, if you will, all over the Central and South American countries. But when the border became as porous as it is and as least protected as it was, they came out of those countries. Now they're at the southern border. But if you go across into Mexico, another report I got says if you go across into Mexico, they're not doing for them what the U.S. is doing for them. They're in a desert place. They have nothing to drink. They have no water. There's no aid being given to them. They're left there to fend for themselves. All of this because of a nice guy. Listen, you voted for him. You voted for him. Yeah, I said it. This is what you went to the booth for because of a lack of foresight. You sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. You've sown the wind, you reap the whirlwind. It's just the way that happens. So you have an opportunity now to become a part of the remedy for this situation. How do you do that? I'm going to go to commercial, and when I come back, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do that, and that'll be our last segment for tonight. It'll take us about 12 minutes, and we'll close up right at 9 o'clock tonight. Hello, everyone. I'm Charles Flowers, the founder of San Antonio in Black, White, and Brown, also known as SABWB. SABWB is the premier leadership space where influencers from every race and position and perspective converge to build relationships and collaborate on the implementation of principles that shape the culture. SABWB is your voice speaking aloud for integrity, for justice and transparency and truth in our city. SABWB is your platform for collaboration leading to impact and transformation. SABWB is your presence in the marketplace of ideas in business and politics and education, sports, entertainment, health and wellness, media, and the church. SABWB needs your partnership as we together transcend the boundaries of race and class and build a kingdom culture here in San Antonio. Partnership is only $10 a month, easy enough for all of us to participate. Many of us doing a little will have major impact in our city. To partner, go to sabwb.org or text SABWB space your gift to 84321. Thank you in advance for joining in the transformation of our city. It's not just going to happen automatically. It will happen because, one, we find each other. Now, there are over 100 people that is involved in a movement that I'm going to reintroduce to many of you tonight. The movement is called the People's Movement. You can become a part of the People's Movement simply by going to our website at sabwb.org. Click on the banner at the top that says Join the People's Movement. When you do, a Google Doc will come down. Fill that Google Doc out. We'll collect that information and begin to communicate with you on several things. One, we're going to do some Zoom training because we're taking nonviolent direct action to put pressure on the culture where it needs to be placed, and to secure freedoms that are flying like migrating birds southward. They're flying away from us now, and we have to secure them with nonviolent direct action. Nonviolent direct action. We do have a blueprint that this is a winning way. That winning way was put forth by none other than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the host of people in the 50s and 60s that joined their faith and their resources together. They joined in like precious faith with one another, and they began to exercise nonviolent direct action, and that caused them to gain victories that you and I are still standing on the shoulders of today. We're standing on the shoulders of champions in the civil rights movement. The people's movement is a modern day expression of the civil rights movement. Click the banner, fill out the Google Doc. That will give us an opportunity to communicate with you and the 100+ others that is already a part of the people's movement. And we're going to do a couple of things. One is that we're going to take a look at principles and key elements and processes in the civil rights movement that gained momentum. One of them is prayer. That's why I begin talking to you all the time about the prayer wave, because the prayer wave is what gave juice, if you will, energy, fuel to the to the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. It will also be prayer that likewise fuels us and moves us forward. You can do a lot of things with inactivity without prayer, but those things have a limited impact. When you involve God, when you let him lead in the process, then you can get a lot more done, because his presence and power is with you, and it can be sustained over a long haul. So fill out that Google Doc, click join the people's movement, fill out the Google Doc, and we'll begin to communicate with you. Now, so there are several things that is coming up in our city, and I want our producer to play one more clip for you. It's about a woman who went to a school board meeting. She's a Black woman. She went to a school board meeting to address them about CRT, about that. So I want to, if I can get the producer's attention, it's a Black woman. I covered it with you before we went on, and she's talking about the CRT. She's talking about critical race theory, and how that has impacted her own life, and it was time for her to stand up. Now, there are many people across the face of our nation who are being affected, school children and parents who are being affected by what is happening in the schools with CRT. And not only so, but with sex education now, the homosexual lifestyle and lesbian lifestyles and other kinds of sexual immorality being taught to young children, and they're being coerced to walk in those steps before they're even old enough to understand. They haven't even gone through puberty yet. There's still some testosterone and estrogen washes that hadn't taken place in them yet, and they're still and in this early unformed stage in their sexual lives, they're being opened up to things that are quite perverted and taught, and is being taught in schools as education under the guise of sexual education. And then institutionalized racism has entered into the schools through the critical race theory. So I want you to just read about it, about the critical race theory. Thank you guys for being on tonight. I'm so glad for your encouragement. Thank you, Melba, and some others of you that are on watching. Thank you so much for hanging with me tonight. So while my producers is getting that piece together, I want to say to you that what we're going to do with the people's movement is that we're going to, once you fill out that Google Doc and we know that you're a part of us, we're going to have training. There are 2 potential training dates coming up, October the 14th and October the 28th, because we have to train ourselves in violent direct action, to know prayerfully where and when to put the pressure to break the tyranny off of our children and break this intent of the enemy to form the young minds of our children in very dark and perverted ways, uh, in many cases, away from what we're training up, the way we're training them up, especially as believers. We're to raise our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord, and to point their heart in the direction of the truth. And if we're trying to do that at home, and yet at school they're learning the exact opposite from that, then there becomes a tug of war over the soul of the child between the school and the home. That should not be. So there are some things that we have to fight for. One of them is to not, this black woman who addresses the school board says in her piece, she said in her piece, I don't want my child to enter into a classroom and there discover in his classroom that just because they're black, that they're automatically labeled as oppressed. She says, I'm not oppressed, and there's a lot of black people who I know are not oppressed. So for them to tell my child that because of the color of his skin, he is automatically oppressed, and the white child that because of the color of his skin, he's automatically the oppressor. That is racism. That's what she said. Here's what I say. I agree with her, that is racist, but it is also the reoccurrence of the same thing that happened in the 50s and 60s called segregation. It's the same thing, that same segregationist idea and attitude that prevailed in the 60s over people whose skin color was like mine is now the same attitude, again, raising itself up to again go to skin color and cause them to have certain predetermined feelings about a person because of the color of their skin. It is nothing more than a rehashing of an old enemy called segregation. This time it is being taught in the schools, and it need not be taught in the schools, but it will be until parents rise up. So if you're a parent and your child is being forced against state law, by the way, to wear a mask to school, or if you're a school employee and you're being forced to get a vaccine against state law, by the way, then we have to find each other. We have to find each other. We have to collect our minds and hearts. We have to pray. We got to get some training, and then we got to execute some action and put the pressure where it belongs until those, you see, here's what tyranny requires: silence and passivity in order to reign. If a person stands up, they no longer, tyranny does not have ability anymore to run its course. It must only take place when there is passivity and ignorance afoot. So if you and I will not be that way, if we won't be passive, let's find each other. We find each other first by going to that Google Doc. Click that banner that says join the People's Movement. If you're a teacher that's being put out, if you're a nurse that's been put out, if you're a doctor that's been told that your service is no longer required, if you're someone in any other professional field like this engineer that talked with me on Sunday, if you're somebody, those kinds of people who are, your job is being threatened or eliminated because you won't take a vaccine, you need to join the People's Movement. We have to find each other, and we have to collect our minds. And the People's Movement is not the only thing going, it's just one of the things that's going. And if you are leading an organization of others who are along this sentiment, let's call us at 210-866-4409, 210-866-4409, and let us know. Well, listen, we have a group of people who feel just like the People's Movement, those 100 plus in the People's Movement, and let's join forces together and begin to use what we have, the authority that we have as we the people, to put the pressure where it belongs and break the hold of tyranny and release freedom and liberty back into our culture. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. So the Lord has to lead us in that, and He will lead us into it if we would but find each other. So I'm going to close now, but I want to remind you of this. 2 potential dates: October 14th, just a couple of weeks away, and then October the 28th at the end of the month. Times of training for those who want to get involved in the people's movement so that we can collect our hearts and minds, pray, seek the face of God, strategize, and then put the pressure where it belongs in the culture. Now, we have 100 plus in the people's movement. We need thousands. We need thousands upon thousands of people who it's like who's the brother from Kentucky, the senator, Rand Paul. Rand Paul said, resist, they can't arrest all of you. This was a part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s philosophy in the 50s and 60s. We'll resist because of the dignity of the human person. We'll resist because of the love of Christ. And if they arrest us, they arrest us. And they did. They arrested many of them. The jails was filled. They kept them in a fairground. But they didn't stop. Be a part of the people's movement, the modern day expression of the civil rights movement. If you are from any profession, any parent, any child, any young person, because this fight is not just for adults, it's for the young people who are walking the halls of your school, and you're being bullied to get a vaccine or to wear a mask, and it's against state law. It is against the direction of the governor. It's against the direction of the attorney general, but the school districts have snuffed in their face and are making you disobey state law as well. If you've had enough, and you're willing to push back in nonviolent, direct action, the people's movement is for you. Now, I want to tell you how you can support SABWB as we move on. The people's movement is our wartime effort. But here's how you can support. The ways are on the screen with you now. You can go online to sabwb.org, become one of our partners. That is a $10, $25, $50, $100, whatever it is you don't miss per month. Whatever it is that you don't miss. Become a partner at that level, and every month that will come forth and help fund those who are doing research for us and places that we need to pull the people's movement folks together, what we need to do to bring the spheres of influence together in our office area. We're doing that still every week. Your support helps that happen. You can do it by check. You can write a check to SABWB and send it to 8023 Vantage Drive, 8023 Vantage Drive, San Antonio, Texas, 78250, I think is the zip code there. Check that out. 8023 Vantage Drive, San Antonio, with the proper zip code. Or you can text to give. You can text to the number 84321 any amount that you want to give. If you've not used that number to text anywhere before, you can just choose SABWB, and every time you use that number 84321 thereafter, SABWB will be the recipient of your gifts. You can also find us on Venmo at SABWB by typing in SABWB. You'll find us on Venmo, and you can find us on Cash App as well, $SABWB. All of this is an attempt to. I was thinking about when I read to you last week. Out of why we can't wait. We can't wait because our freedoms are being taken. We can't wait because our children are being manipulated. We can't wait because our families are being strained. There's a lot of reasons we cannot wait. We must now move forward together to secure the freedoms that have flown like the birds flying south, as I said. They're migrating southward. You and I have to be a people who are willing to fight for what we know to be right, not only for ourselves, but for our posterity, to secure blessings of liberty for ourselves and for our posterity. You can't wait to do that. So join me in that effort by giving in those ways, and we'll be stronger together as we do so. Thanks for joining me tonight again for Transcendent. It's another broadcast right here on the Influencers platform, the weekly Facebook Live of San Antonio in black, white, and brown. Blessings to you. Thank you for your partnership. We will see you again next Tuesday, 8 o'clock, right here on Influencers platform. Love you. Blessings.